Welcome to this TerraCode Short, where we explore the code behind decentralized business models, exponential culture, and AI's disruptive impact. I'm Michael Cowen, the most untechy CEO of a global AI business called Teraflow.ai.
If Teraflow had an internal brand promise, it would be the idea that we put our staff first and we look to double their capacity and value by the time they actually leave us. And I think this is a really important cultural principle because it defines how we as a business develop our teams. We focus on the idea of potential and how do we actually create value, not only for our staff, but the teams that they work in and ultimately the collective of the business. And I want to take this idea and I want to reframe it into something a bit more structured in terms of what our internal brand promises at Teraflow. And it's built on this idea of leverage. Doubling your value is really going from a 1-to-1 input-output ratio to a 1-to-5 or whatever it is. And this is ultimately built in the idea of leverage, the principle of leverage, Archimedes' lever. I think we all understand this from school, if we can remember that far back. But how do we actually go about doing this? And how do we use this idea of leveraging up? And what does this actually mean in the business? There are three critical components or principles to this idea of leveraging up, and I'm going to take you through each of these principles separately. The first principle is really about narrowing your focus. Marketers understand this very well. I learned this early on in my career. The narrower your focus, the broader your appeal. You want to be everything to everyone, you're nothing to anybody. And it's the same principle when you're trying to develop yourself. You've got to focus very specifically on a couple of critical outcomes that you want to achieve. And of course, in order to increase your output, you've actually got to refine your input. So there's this symbiotic relationship between the input, the output, and how you actually go about developing yourself. And this is why programs, and we've built programs within Teraflow around Design My Career, where you actually are able to self-direct your career into a process and goal development framework that is relevant to you. We've also brought in personal branding framework so that you understand the value that you want to create, the longer term picture that you want to develop. So this idea of narrowing the focus is a very, very important part of leveraging up, which is very central to the whole internal brand at Teraflow. The second principle is really around the idea of raising the tempo or increasing the tempo or amping up. It's very easy to delay what can be done today for tomorrow. We all do it, the procrastination. And as the business grows, as we get more people into the business, it's very easy for us to sit back and say, wait a minute, someone else is going to take responsibility for doing this. But we can't afford this. In terms of this AI disruption that's coming, the demands on businesses today, we've got to continually amp up. But we've also got to balance this with burnout. And it's important that we understand our focus. Again, narrowing the focus to amping up. And we create the value that's very important to us. But the more that we can actually amp up our energy, our intensity, our effort, etc., the more important it actually becomes in terms of growing our capacity and also, more importantly, your ability to accelerate your career. The third principle really is about raising the standards. And for me, I've talked about our 2% end-to-end consistency. And the idea here is remarkably simple. If we just 2% better at everything that we do than our competition, I can guarantee you we're going to be twice as valuable to them in the market because our competition is going to have holes in their processes. And if we focus on building an end-to-end solution and our external brand promises that we deliver, and we understand how to do this, and we continually refining the process through this continual improvement cycle that we go through, we're able to raise the standards and our competitiveness and our barrier to the moat that we're creating around the business becomes that much more powerful. So each one of these principles are really important in terms of understanding how we develop ourselves, work together as squads, and how we bring it all together in terms of this internal brand promise.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to this TerraCode Short.